Okay.
Yeah.
We are live now. Welcome to the special live broadcast of Latitude at Frontline. Nepal's unrest, led by the youth or the Gen Z protesters since September 8th, have caused a political earthquake that few saw coming. After 19 protesters were killed in police firing, the protests turned violent. The Home Minister's resignation did not cool tempers. There was a lot of vandalism, arson, killings yesterday. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli resigned and fled, and his whereabouts are now unknown. Ministers and other politicians are in hiding or have been given security by the Nepal army. The Nepal army is in charge now of the country, and the army chief General Ashok Raj Sigdal has appealed to protesters to halt their protest programs and come forward for a dialogue to resolve the situation and find a peaceful way out for the country. With me today on this live broadcast are two very eminent guests. One is Akhilesh Upadhyay, who is a well-known journalist and a strategic affairs thinker in Nepal. He is affiliated to the uh, he's affiliated to the um, uh, just help me, Akhilesh, to the Institute for Integrated Development Studies in Kathmandu, and R.K. Radhakrishnan, who's a senior journalist. He's with Frontline, and he covers South Asia. Of course, he covers Tamil Nadu. He covers a lot of political events in India, especially in Tamil Nadu. But he has vast experience in India's neighborhood as well. Uh, Welcome, both of you, and welcome to all those people who are listening in to this special live broadcast. Uh, Akhilesh, let me start with you. Let's start with what's happening today. We have we saw what happened yesterday. There was so much arson and so much violence. Has it calmed down today after the army has taken charge? Today is September 10th, and it's the third day since all this began. What is the situation right now on the ground? If you can briefly tell us what that is.
Yeah, the situation is a lot more calmer, and uh, I mean, when a lot of people, when they talk about a national army, there's this thought about Pakistan or in some case even Bangladesh. So Nepal's history of army coming out of the barracks is not common, and it is always looked for a civilian face, and there's no history of army chiefs being adventurous at the cost of civilian government. That should be a qualifier. And if there was some delay last night, in hindsight, I sense that the army was more reluctant to come out, and they had to be kind of persuaded back room, because don't forget, there is no uh, party in government per se to mobilize. So that being the case, I also found this morning that there was a lot of conversation with Gen Z activists or possibly leaders that will see soon emerge, and uh, and many of them are actually, some of the participants from Gen Z movement are also women, who were participating in the talks last night, and
Right. Who
the
was talking to
contours.
them? Who's talking to whom here?
Okay, the army leadership and the civilian face, Balin Saha, Kathmandu's mayor, young mayor,
Mhm.
but also the Gen Z faces who are involved, because we still don't know who they are, but it is not a mysterious thing, it's a small town. But I began to see their appeals in the morning, appealing for calm, all over social media. And the Kathmandu streets, unlike last night, a lot more calmer. There is a big mall next to me, which was partly set on fire. It's calmed down, and yeah, it's looking a lot more calmer. But the Gen Z activists are also on the ground cleaning up the streets that have been dirtied for 3 years. Hectic, kind of work on the ground, a lot of hope, that kind of thing. It's like suddenly, if Tuesday morning was like extremely volatile, including where I live, which is just by the CPN UML headquarters, which is the party of the ex prime minister, the KP Oli, who fled yesterday. His whereabouts remain unknown. Some say he's in Dubai. Some said he's in hiding somewhere. Some said he's like fled through the open border to India. I don't know. But the Gen Z men and women, young men and women in full force all across Nepal this morning.
Right. So there's now a vacuum at this point, and you mentioned the mayor of Kathmandu, Balendra Shah. He seems to have come out early enough yesterday, and he had a Facebook post appealing for calm and saying, "Look, the prime minister has resigned. He's gone. You've got what you wanted. Now let's talk about this." So he already seems to have positioned himself as somebody who could fill this space. What are your thoughts about him? Tell us a little about this gentleman, Mayor Balendra Shah. He's from what I've heard, he used to be a rapper, and now he's the mayor of Kathmandu.
Yeah, I mean, uh, 3 years ago, kind of like when the local elections happened, the traditional power centers in Nepal politics have been Nepali Congress, I would say a centrist party, and the CPN-UML, the Communist Party. Yeah. So they have been taking turns. And the third one, of course, the Maoist Party, led by
Yeah.
Prachanda. Yeah, since 1990, but after the Maoists came above ground in 2006, they've also been one of the three parties who are on a musical chair race for prime ministership. So there was this common wisdom, conventional wisdom that one of the two candidates, will prevail. One was a former mayor himself with UML, and the other one was someone who belonged to Nepali Congress's legacy family, and a woman. And I remember talking to a lot of young people in because I was out by then. I was out of Kathmandu Post, free to roam around, but didn't also have a baggage of a newspaper editorship, which is oftentimes a lot more helpful than otherwise. I found that in a random conversation I would have with a youth, I was attending a company retreat, and I found that they said, "Oh, we'd rather vote for Balen Saha." And don't forget, he was still a very much unknown figure. A most generous vote that he was given in my private conversation with his senior newspaper editor was, "Oh, he'll get 20,000. Sorry, 12,000." Be a spoiler to one of these two big party ticket candidates than win. But he happened to win the election with a handsome margin. Very, very handsome. It was a landslide win, by the way.
Right.
So that's his background. Yes, he's a rapper. He's young. He doesn't understand or speak partyese, as I call it, the language the party has been using. And people, especially young people, don't buy it anymore. That said, I would also like to kind of like, I'm also a little wary of this narrative that you deify a single person in a movement and in a society as diverse as ours. And the civilian face of the government in waiting, I hope will have more than Balen Saha, while he does to some extent represent Gen Z, which is of course itself, I don't know how many groups, yeah, 10 groups, or today I found 11. And yeah, to set them in motion, set them in dialogue, his standing does help, but I'm sincerely hoping that more elements come into the fore to give it the civilian government in making. For example, the fourth largest party with the three party discredited, the Maoist party, CPN, UML,
Yeah.
and NC. For now, I qualify again for now. The groundswell probably demands that maybe the fourth party comes into the race, Rashtriya Swatantra Party, but
That's right.
also credible faces across the civil society spectrum, across the ethnic group, maybe like some academic, etc. It's because army itself will not carry that political steam in the long run,
Just
and people are sorry.
let me just bring in RK here. He's Radhakrishnan, but I'm used to calling him RK. RK, I just want you to come in here and tell us what you see as similarities with Bangladesh, say, in this situation, and what are the differences, uh, especially also in the way India has responded to what is going on, and also, we both covered the Sri Lanka protests also. So, how do you see that as different from those particular movements, the Aragalia in Sri Lanka? Um, uh, the students movement in Bangladesh, and now the Gen Z protest um, in Nepal. How do you compare them?
Thank you, Nirupama. And good morning, Akhilesh. And thank you, viewers, who have joined us right here. Yes, Nirupama, there is a lot of similarities if you ask in both, the Bangladesh and in the Sri Lanka. There was a defining moment in all these things, as Akhilesh has rightly written in the Hindustan Times on 9th. The title is "Why the Old Regime in Nepal Had to Exit." The defining moment here was a hit and run case, as Akhilesh rightly points out. That is his lead of the story. The car that belonged to Kosi province finance minister knocked down an 11-year-old girl. And apparently, Oli called it, this is from Oli's party, so Oli called it a minor incident and said that compensation will be paid. And the driver was out in 24 hours' time. This is how, Akhilesh begins the story. Similar things have happened both in Sri Lanka and in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, obviously, the killing of 19 people by the police, that was a reaction to the protest. But the protest, what led to the protest was this. You can't say one incident, but a culmination of incidents like these, where you see the impunity both in Sri Lanka and in Bangladesh of the Awami League in Bangladesh, and of course Mahinda Rajapaksa and the entire Rajapaksa clan in Sri Lanka. In the case of Awami League, the trouble started soon after the elections itself, I would say, where the BNP was not allowed to contest, or rather, refused to contest, and Jamaat Islami was more like, these are all Pakistanis, and they were also not allowed to contest. So the build-up began from there. Okay, there was political inputs into the agitation that went on, but again, the Dhaka University ruling, the Supreme Court ruling on the reservation case was the precursor in the Bangladesh instance. And as you can see, the institutions of governance, be it the court, be it the parliament, be it the politicians, be it the executive, have all fused together, so to say, that this is not something that we see only in South Asia. We see that today in the US as well, which of course have completely stayed away from the perception of the public in the first place, or rather the perceived perception of the public itself. And that is exactly what happened in Sri Lanka also. In the lead up to Gotabaya Rajapaksa's resignation, also you will see a compliant executive, a compliant judiciary, and a compliant all institutions of governance, media completely compliant. That is what we saw in Kathmandu as well, where we saw the media, the most biggest media office, Kantipur, being burnt to ground. So all of these things have come to a place where it is not just Gen Z, I would say. It is obviously corruption, nepotism, and all of that, and on public display on social media. And of course, Akhilesh also points to what happened in Indonesia in the next paragraph, where he says that Indonesian parliamentarians awarding themselves about 3,000 US dollars monthly housing allowance was the reason for the protests in Indonesia. So we see this as a phenomenon across the world. And what I've been speaking to my students, ex-students from the ACJ and other places, and of course my own friends in Nepal this morning and last night after we decided to do this show, and they're not worried about not having provisions or not having the creature comforts of life. Electricity in some places have been blocked and all of that. But the point happens to be that they're all looking forward to a better tomorrow. They're saying that the violence has died down. I'm not sure if Akhilesh will be able to say if that's the case or not. And they all look forward to a future, and they have a list of names as well. We'll come to that later. But then I would like to check if this is a fact that the violence has actually died down in Nepal.
Yeah, Akhilesh. You were saying that there's that you are looking forward to an interim setup that will be sort of more representative. It will be inclusive. It will have members of civil society. It will have other parties representation from some other political outfits, perhaps. What exactly do you have in mind when you say uh, that uh, the interim administration? What kind of interim administration? In Bangladesh, we have seen, for instance, that it was led by a non-politician. Here, it is a person who was a who's is a new politician who's readying to take charge. But I think there are other people waiting in the wing. There were reports that the leader of the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, Rabi Lamichhane, has been released. Is that correct? And then Sumana Shrestha of the RSP has also emerged as a favorite. Could you throw some light on this, please?
Yeah, I mean, the interim phase, as we can see in Bangladesh now, as the interim phase, when will the election happen? It's around the corner. The problem is the corner keeps on moving.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
when
Very well put.
when there is a groundswell, there's a lot of acceptance of the people who are emerging. But the groundswell, as we have seen, all movements around the world do not last. And the public is anxious. It is also an often case public opinion can be very fickle. Kind of like Kathmandu's mood yesterday versus now is like, I don't know, 100% different.
The
But
temperatures
I
dropped.
am not. Yeah, I mean, the temperature has dropped, calm has returned, but who knows, right? This is what I'm trying to say. It could go. I don't expect any post groundswell movement. This is not a what you call like a one government handing it to the other after the election results, right?
Yeah.
It's a regime change, if I may. So the graph will not be kind of like this in terms of temperature dropping. It'll probably be like this, like this, like this, right? So this is when the the faces of civilians who are acceptable to as like seen as broad messengers who are credible. The broader it is, the better it is for the future. Not so broad that they begin to fight with each other, but definitely broad enough to represent all sections of the society. Kind of like Nepal has a diverse ethnic group. So Gen Z, while they have been the triggers of the current movement, will need to sustain it, and hence I would like to see a coalition that's. And I was very happy that the conversation between the army leadership and the Gen Z representatives yesterday also had young women. So this is what will make it more broad based in the long run, rather than okay, as solid as Balinese. not centralize all our dialogue to a single person. Made Balin, made XYZ. That's then we fall into the trap of deifying other leaders in the past.
Right.
There's like countless examples in world history that when the power gets centralized, it leads to a different kind of disgruntlement in short and long term, and sorry, in medium and long term.
Right. So, what kind of change will this interim administration then prepare the country for? Will it be according to the present constitution, or will it be a completely different transition? So my question is this a, Nepal's process of transition has been really long since the abolition of the monarchy. Uh, it's taken, it took so many years, firstly, to drop the constitution, then the constitution was adopted, and then there's been a revolving door of governments, uh, in very short order. Uh, and all these have been, one has seen them as transitions towards a point where the Nepal political class actually gets comfortable in the new constitutional order. But now there seems to be a complete rejection of that order, rejection of what has gone, all this work that has uh, preceded this moment, to take Nepal from a monarchy to a secular constitutional to constitutional republic. So, what will come after the interim administration? Will it
Okay.
be under the constitution? You made a mention in your article that it could be an amendment to the existing constitution. What will that amendment be, or what do you foresee here?
Okay. Very, very pertinent question as we kind of like deal with the broad issues here. This is a specific one I want to handle. I mean, one way. I mean, the best thing as any person who believes in nonviolent transition of power, is to have a constitutionalism in place that certain individuals don't run astray from the kind of like meridian, if there is one, backbone. And the backbone to me is the process of constitutionalism. And if we stick to the constitution we currently have and drawn through the 2006 movement and elected constitution assembly twice, it was very time consuming, but it also had, at least for the time, a very acceptable for broad constituencies. That said, it also has a problem because this constitution doesn't allow what is currently happening now, the groundswell. And the groundswell in any democracies or any transition takes precedence over constitutionalism for that small window when the people say, okay, we don't want a change. We didn't believe in the previous constitution, previous regimes, the previous parties that rule us, and hence let's do something. So one non-messy way to do it, put an amendment to the constitution as we did in our first big transition in 1990, with some of the constitutional amendments endorsed by, I don't know, the head of the state, Ramchandra Paudel, the president, and the broad acceptance of the public. Because for now, the position of Gen Z, as I hear now, not stated, but in public is, and including from Berlin, is, oh, we don't like the current constitution. The current constitution has to go. So I don't know. There could be a quickly drawn up interim constitution as we did in 1990.
What is the problem with the current constitution that they are citing?
One of the things that's come up is, do we need provincial assemblies, which came into place for a country which is not necessarily large, though very diverse, in terms of the provincial assemblies' financial viabilities. How do they raise tax? Is the constituency big enough for there's been a lot of debate since as a federalist myself,
So
I kind of like
if that is the
go on.
objection, that's going to open up a whole other lot of cans of worms, I guess. If it's anti-federal, if the objection is really based on some anti-federalism, then that will be a very different. I mean, we're talking about a very uh, different kind of country, then, isn't it? And that's going
I
to
mean,
be a lot of other
let's
kinds
say
of unrest.
different. Yeah, that's a different kind of not country, but constitutionalism. I mean, okay. And I don't know, honestly, because some of the provinces, especially the Madhes province, and there's a very strong constituency in favor of federalism, for example. And yeah, these are the challenges the new government, or I would not like to say government, the transitional government will have to listen to. While this is where we will see whether Balin Shah or Balin Shahs can rise up to the challenge. It's one thing to run a mayoral government very successfully. It's entirely different thing to govern a constituency as diverse as Nepal, kind of like 100 dialects, many ethnic groups. And yeah, I mean, that's a whole different yeah thing. That And then a lot of narratives that's been based on recent talk shows and television and newspapers in the center is pretty much uh, around Gen Z. That's
Right.
fine, but it probably have to kind of expand to also, how would I say, kind of take in the reality that we live in. That the fact is, Nepal remains an extremely diverse, ethnically diverse country, and with its own proud history of various ethnic groups. And yeah, there should be a give and take, as all successful peace processes are.
Right.
Just to
Uh,
Nirupama, just to add to that, see, there are names and there are issues. The issues obviously is that uh, people obviously are fed up with what has happened. That's extremely clear. In fact, the friends that I spoke to are saying that they have absolutely no sympathy for the finance minister who was beaten up on the streets, pushed into the river, and all of that. Not even for the killing of the former prime minister's wife. So. That the anger is so much. So obviously, all these things have to be reflected in whatever setup comes. Obviously, youth have to be a part of that setup. Some are calling for youth-led initiatives and all of that. So it appears, Akhilesh will be able to say this for sure, that the Rashtriya Swatantra Party seems to be one of the parties which is kind of, acceptable to the people, just as the JVP was in Sri Lanka. Party was formed in 2022. It was part of the government as well. Uh, present government obviously, but in 2024 they decided to part ways. Now, will somebody like Rabi be acceptable? He was this MD of this Galaxy 4K television. Uh, he is not exactly an extremely clean guy, but at the same time, for want of somebody better, of course, Balin is always there. Balendra Shah is always there. He studied in Karnataka and all of that, and he is also associated with little bit of anti-India protests, wherein he banned some, film shows in films in Kathmandu for obviously specific reasons. As you pointed out, this one, the former Minister for Education, who is again around 40, Sumana Shrestha. Balin was born in April 1990. So, it's like a completely different generation of people. Harka Sampang, again a mayor, was with the British Army, the Nepali British Army, and now he's back and seems to have some traction. Former Chief Justice Sushila Karki, who was nearly thrown out when the government changed, but then she managed to hang on. So these may be the leaders, and of course, right now held together well, as you pointed out, by the army chief. The country is being held together, Ashok Raj Singh. Now, the point is that what are the pressures on all these, personalities, and are they aware of those pressures? My friends tell me yes, they are very aware of the pressures from both the Ministry of State Security, RNDW, CIA, and all of that. And ISI doesn't seem to have the budget to these days, play too much effective a role in Nepal. And it seems that everybody is aware of these uncertainties, these problems and these pressures on them. And that is probably why, it's there for everyone to see, right? The fact that, from 2008 onwards, they have some, 13 governments, for 13 or 14 governments in 2008 itself, and before that it's from 1996 itself. They've seen the number of governments, and there is a large majority of this, even among politicians who think that India has a hand in some of these governments. And jockeying among these major political parties also is likely to start now. I'm not sure if, like in Sri Lanka, what we have seen in Sri Lanka is that everybody has come back, right? I mean, Gotabaya Rajapaksa actually fled the country. Mahinda Rajapaksa was in hiding. And most of these politicians were in hiding because their houses are burned down. But we saw that with Ranil bringing stability to Sri Lanka, we saw that every single politician has come back, and they are all thriving. They're all part of parliament. Like most of them are part of parliament. And it's not business as usual, obviously, because JVP is in power and they're doing some things right, but they're not doing enough for the people to be very happy about it. People are not unhappy, but people are not happy either. So, do we see the same enactment? Come to Bangladesh, we see a situation where the chief advisor and his team have been talking, making noises about elections, have even told them when a time frame can be drawn up, and have a time frame drawn up. But even then, there are protests on the streets. So, is it that that all these names? Will people, and especially Gen Z, have the ability to understand that political processes take time, and the fact that elections take time, and the fact that change takes time? Are they willing to accept that, given the situation, what they've seen in Sri Lanka or even in Bangladesh? Maybe Akhilesh can tell us about something of that. And Nirupama, what do you think? I mean, you've been asking questions. You also should come in, because you also have followed the region
No, no,
very
I'm,
closely.
I'm, I'm only going to ask questions. Akhilesh?
Yes, go on.
Yeah, what Radhakrishnan just said, is Gen Z in a position to understand that everything can't happen immediately, not overnight, that it takes time. Just like in Bangladesh, we've seen that they wanted constitutional reform and they wanted the changes to the constitution immediately. Now it has been said that the incoming government, when the elections are held, that incoming government will bring about will carry out the changes, reforms to the constitution that have been agreed. So Gen Z wants everything to happen quickly, but do they understand that whatever they want is going to take some time, and it may not necessarily happen overnight, and it probably needs the kind of processes that they have just rejected, institutionalized processes.
I mean, listen, I always have seen this. You all have seen this. It is the crisis that throws up new party. It is the crisis that throws up new leaders, right? So that being the history of the world ever since humanity has existed, they'll have to, not just Gen Z, we all have to adjust to the situation rather than being dogmatic about okay, this will have to be in X way, and if it doesn't, I will not be part of the process. What country
Right.
now needs leaders or new leaders who will emerge, will naturally be accepted by the citizenry, who are broadly compromising than dogmatic. Yeah, this is where the biggest the mayor will lie too, Balin. Does he have that in him? We'll see. I give him the benefit of the doubt, given having governed Kathmandu city pretty well, actually very handsomely rather than big party leaders any time in the past. But his taste also begins now, and he will have to also bring in other acceptable faces that people would like to see in government or transition. Uh, if yeah, I mean, you have talked about some leaders in RPP, but there are also others, like say the
RSP.
Harvard. No, the RSP.
Yeah,
I've also
RSP.
I also have other names to say. It's a party of pretty solid technocrats, kind of. Dr. Sony Muagle, an economist, Harvard trained.
Yes. Yeah.
He had a landslide victory in Tano, and he speaks the language the global leader speaks, and as fluently as he does his Nepali speeches to the crowd, when he addresses them. So this is when the country comes up with new faces, and he understands the economy, perhaps one of the best MPs in terms of explaining the intricacies of economy, given his solid background as an economist with, I don't know, the best
He's a
institutions in the.
he's a policy guy. If I
He
have
is a policy guy who's turned politician, won a handsome majority from his constituency. So he's evolved into a pretty acceptable kind of leader for not just the party, but beyond the party. He speaks the
right.
new language, let's say, but not just him, many others in RSP. But let's not forget the Nepali Congress and UML, let's not discard them to the dustbin of history suddenly. Yes, Uli has fled. Yes, Dioba has been vilified. And he was the fifth term that he had it and the foreign minister, his wife. But there are also like many solid faces in the Nepali Congress who have toiled, and the constituency still trusts them like they trust some other leaders, and then they have been tested not just once, twice, thrice, and more than 4 times in elections. So you can't suddenly say that, oh, Nepali Congress is history. Nepali Congress as a party that it has stood is perhaps history, and fairly so, but it will begin to reinvent wheels and find leaders who are more acceptable to the new generation. Gen Z being just one of them, honestly. Gen Z, you have to understand, triggered the movement, and very lightly so. But I don't know, it could coalesce into a party or coalition, who knows? So we're at that stage, I almost describe it beautiful uncertainty. And the new transition government also need non-party faces broadly. For example, Dr. RK has been speaking. He's speaking to some friends. I was speaking to some friends. They were frightened this morning about how far Gen Z could go.
Right.
So let's not forget the little leaders. Let's not even say the leaders at the community level, and the people who are credible to broad section of society may not be in Gen Z per se. So you can't suddenly say that, oh, only the 20 somethings will rule Nepal now on. Let's be very honest about it. And
Right.
this morning I talked to a lot of people said that, do you have army in your neighborhood? I would like to have one. The people foolish, the shot so many on that fateful day, kind of like, for now, people are more accepting of the army than the police for now. But then, of course, it will change over time. So you have to keep in mind that let's not glorify a single institution and individuals, uh, because you do need a very inclusive transition. I'm using the word inclusion not just for the heck of it, but it means a lot in a society as broad based as ours. Kind of look at the geography from the Himalayas down to the tropics in such a tiny space. and there are valleys in between, Kathmandu being the largest
Yeah.
in terms of population, and the eastern Nepal touches Sikkim, but west is Tibet. Sorry, north is Tibet, and the south is hugely populated, the Tarai region, with among India's most populated state, just north of it, to the Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and the mountains of the western Nepal is next to Uttarakhand, kind of like Rishikesh,
That's right.
you name it. Yeah. So it is a very diverse country, but again, thanks to the Gen Z movement, the current movement, they have coalesced various coalitions together very successfully in giving everyone a hope. While a lot of people were saying, "Oh, these guys will rule the roost. Oli will remain forever. He'll retire and will be whatever." These guys say no. These guys didn't want to draw parallel to Bangladesh, even Indonesia, which happened very recently. No parallels to anything past in Nepal's history. The 1990 movement, 2006 mass movement, and they wanted to define their own history. So credit to them, But let's not get too carried away by the fact that only the Gen Z leaders will carry Nepal forward in this very difficult transition.
Yeah, you mentioned how some friends of yours were shocked at how far Gen Z could go. I don't know if that was an allusion to the violence at the protest sites yesterday, the arson and the burning down of public buildings and the violence against politicians. The former prime minister's wife died apparently um, as her house was being burnt, and
Yeah,
one doesn't know
unfortunately,
quite
yeah.
exactly whether she was
You're
inside the house or outside or what. But um, the change in the character of the protests from what was a peaceful anti-corruption rally to a murderous mob violence kind of thing, the physical targeting of politicians and the arson and all that. Uh, was it? I, I mean, did anybody see that coming on the 8th of September? Because that was a very peaceful kind of, there were people in uniform, kids in uniform, and it was a very different kind of protest. So what happened
okay.
to change that into this?
Yeah,
Were there some other elements in it?
I would the first one to admit. I would be the first one to admit I didn't foresee that Nepal would change upside down in 24 hours. So if any analyst claims that I foresaw that, that will be a little delusional to say the least. You know, I didn't foresee. I live just by the headquarters of the prime minister's party, and yeah, it was business as usual in
Which
terms
was
of like
burnt down, right? Yesterday.
not
That,
burned down. Some parts of it was vandalized. It's not burned down. I mean,
okay.
television's footage can oftentimes be very, very exaggerating, to be honestly.
Right.
I mean, like when you see these like burning footages in Delhi or Chennai, you think all of Kathmandu is burned down, and I'm dead. And a lot of messages from good friends and families across the world are saying, "Oh, that's all fine. We saw your television commentary, but are you fine? Is your wife okay? Are the kids fine?" I mean, it's not so bad. It will be bad. What I'm saying is, okay, look at what happened on Monday. I mean, like serious clampdown on peaceful protesters, young kids in uniforms. Come on, that's not done in a democracy. Yeah. And what happened the next 24 hours? These footages were widely shared. you know Nepali population extremely well plugged, not within Nepal but also outside. We have a huge diaspora in US, in Australia. 1% of national population is Nepali now, and cities like Hobart has close to 20% of Nepali population. And then these, in the lack of a better word, these young kids share the same aspirations and also deep frustrations with the non-performing political class who don't quite speak the language they speak. These kids are aspirational. They have seen the world. Their worldview is very, very well developed. they're tech savvy, and there's this idea by the old generation, not even old generational thinkers, I would say. You can be young and yet be old in the mind, and the other way around too, to kind of dismiss the aspirations of the young people. Oh, they don't get it. They are not Nepali enough. They are not like political enough. So this idea will go for a beautiful turning in the next, I don't know, year or two, and I hope so. And the results and the election hopefully takes place. I would like to kind of realistically think after 6 months or close to a year, around that period when kind of like situation normalizes, voter rolls are like, a lot of young people who are not in voters list and didn't care to vote would say, oh no, I do want to vote now, because I believe in personal agency, as the Gen Z movement did now. So they're going to be like massive turnout. And then I always say the biggest manifestation of that political awakening would be ultimate enfranchise of Nepali diaspora. Close to 5 million or more live abroad, or have citizenship in, say, or working as a remittance worker in kind of Malaysia, the Gulf. We'll have to find some form of political expression for these people. Our
Yeah,
people, actually.
because these people that you talk about, the diaspora, are really the economic backbone
Yeah.
of the country, aren't they? I mean, they are the one that's earning and sending back, remitting money to families. Unemployment in Nepal is huge. I read today that 1 in 5 people in the in what should be the working force are unemployed. So there are all those problems as well. And even if there is a transition to an accept to a dispensation that is acceptable to the people who wanted that change, uh, the economy and all that is going to take a lot of time to kind of find its feet, isn't it? I mean, after
Yeah, I mean,
COVID, Nepal has not really recovered.
yes and no. The growth has been pretty steady. 4 point whatever is not bad for many. But in South Asian terms, where two big economies, China to the north and India, have been like on a steady growth path for decades now. We pale, but we haven't done too bad. But I totally agree. We are in a remittance trap. Nepal would be alongside these tiny countries like Antigua, etc., the Caribbean
Yeah,
islands and some others in the Pacific, would be the highest has the highest reliance on remittance earnings, in terms of its GDP share. So that's a given. So what I'm saying is, and because it's not so big as, say, 1.4 billion India, we just need a steady growth for 5 years for people to stabilize, the economies to stabilize. So hence, the new leadership that comes needs a solid imagination of political transfer, not just political transformation. We've talked enough about this. 1990 movement politics, 2006 movement ideological politics. So we need inclusion, etc. That's fine. No one is denying it. We do need inclusion. But in order to kind of like take the population together, we would rather have this demographic dividends of young people working in our country rather than toiling and dying in the Gulf.
right. Earlier this year, we saw protests uh, demanding a return to the monarchy, precisely for this. I mean,
Sorry,
the
could you speak?
underlying.
Sorry, I
I
couldn't quite get it.
Yeah,
Who saw
I
the protest?
earlier this year, earlier in March this
Okay.
year, in
Yeah, yeah,
2025,
yeah, yeah.
we saw protests in Nepal demanding a return to the monarchy. And even the underlying causes for those protests also seem to be, economic discontent, widespread unemployment, the absence of any solutions for a better life, all those. And then people seem to think that bringing back the monarchy is going to probably solve their problems. and and I I just wanted to ask you if there is seen to be a link to those protests in these protests.
Let's put it this way. I mean, in a protest as diverse as I saw yesterday all across Nepal, there will be diverse forces at work, right? Everyone who is disgruntled for something or the other, not just with the government but with the regime. You know, the post 2026 regime or the parties that kind of like have dominated Nepal's politics, or let's say political landscape. Yeah. But that said, it was only a political movement of a group who wanted the king back. Yeah. I would perhaps think there's more appetite for cultural revival that has swept the East, all of the East, China, India, going through like in Chinese vocab, they like to call it rejuvenation. And when I interviewed a certain senior official, I kept, what do you attribute to the rise of China? And he corrected me quickly and said politely, let's use the word rejuvenation. So, with the economic prosperity both in China and India, there is also a deep sense of revivalism. I'm not condoning chauvinism by any means, huh? But sense of pride in what we wore, etc. There's some appetite in Nepal to kind of have its own history written by Nepalese. You know, let's celebrate our past across the communities, but also be a little diverse about it rather than uniform history and a unified history that for 30 years the monarchy kind of like propagated. Kind of like with themselves at the centrality of everything Nepali. Yeah, that's not quite what I see happening. Yes, there are some diehard royalists, I can see that, but do they represent the broad Nepali mass? I have a question mark. As an analyst, I remain open to listen to ideas otherwise.
No,
The Sorry, RK.
yeah, the problem with this entire royalty issue is that from 2015, anything that happened in Nepal seems to have an Indian connections. There is a view in the Indian establishment itself that monarchy would have been easier. I mean, much better to reclaim the Hindu kingdom in Nepal. Number one. Number two, on September 3, lawmakers in parliament themselves have questioned the prime minister on his GSI, the blanket, global security initiative, Beijing's global security initiative. Nepal foreign ministry had issued a statement saying that we are on board with China. So there's reading these two together. Akhilesh, do you think that this particular protest also seems to? I mean, can India be blamed at any point of time because of what has happened there? And RNDW's huge presence, like in Bangladesh, is also significant there. And then there is also this, issues with the Madhesis and the Bahadis. And always you have somebody like Yogi Adityanath having such huge clout in Nepal. Obviously, I don't see a statement from Yogi so far, but are any of these things? Is there an anti-India sentiment at work at all in Nepal at this point? And does the Nepali common man, does he accuse India of fostering some of these problems there in Nepal?
RK, first of all, I'm glad you're asking it, because a lot of shows I've been in for 3 days kind of like put Nepalese as always like, oh, there's like anti-China movement, and the Chinese are playing their
Correct.
hands up again, and others are saying it was the TikTok was open, but Facebook wasn't open. So America is deeply involved with the deep state, and there is also similar viewpoint that, oh, because KP was not very popular with the Delhi government, and there's a lot of machinations going on to kind of Topol Oli, and he was happy to play that ground, as a populist leader, Oh yeah, maybe kind of thing. He would not say on record, but I could hear some of the communist leaders saying that in private conversation, Now, as someone like who believes in, kind of like more evidence-based analysis, I don't have any evidence, even remotely, to support either of these three theses, which is like, to me, like conspiracy theories, I mean, like conspiracy theories, I mean, like have a life of their own, this beautiful valley, Kathmandu, it just circulates, because it's a valley. And then every second point, everyone says, oh, I have something new to say, by the way. And the new thing is almost invariably one of the new conspiracies theory, So yeah, I that's my one point. But the other thing about religion and Nepali voters or Nepali thing, the largest party that is pro-royalist is RPP, which is the fifth largest party. And religion has never been a trump card in Nepal's politics yet. Yet, I qualify again as an analyst. In the recent by-election, RPP candidates were dropped. Kind of like zamanat zabt ho gaya. So I don't see it flying. But again, because we are in such a state of flux in the last couple of years, who knows? One of the bigger parties to come may say, okay, we Sanatan Dharma is more the language here rather than, because we have had a history of secularism recently, at least declared secularism, but there's also pretty serious following outside the political party, but across the political parties for the Hinduism as a culture. And I have written in one of my columns for Hindustan Times, Modi visits Muktinath, which is at a very high altitude just below the Himalayas, at the foothills of the Himalayas, and in the Tarai he visits Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Buddha, and in Tarai he also visits Janakpur Dham and speaks in actually a local dialect, local language, Maithili, not dialect, excuse me, and he can connect to that cultural thing. But in Nepal, to this day, in terms of a manifestation of voting, the Hindu elements hasn't come into play. And we see him as more as a cultural ambassador than a political ambassador of Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma, as I would like to call it.
Right.
Yeah, Arcade, please, I'm happy to answer your questions if I missed any. But I liked your
No.
question.
But this is fine. I mean, the Indian angle is, problematic because for anything that happens in Nepal, there is always an Indian angle, there is a China angle, there is a US angle. So I come from there, and of course, from 2015, after the blockade, and the same government continues. Jaishankar is still the foreign minister. He had come there, asked you to stand down on your constitution, all of that. So the bad blood that has been generated in 2015, regardless of the transitions in power in government in Nepal, has always continued, and every single government cannot actually ignore this anti-India sentiment, and come and break bread with Delhi as often as it was possible at one point of time. So I just wanted to clarify on that.
No.
Yes, thank
I
you.
mean, also keep in mind, because it's an open border and there's such deep cultural links between Indian population and Nepali. Forget Indian state and Kathmandu. So forget Kathmandu and Delhi. I mean, like our rivers flow to India, there's a link. And rivers are wholly on either side. It's not an inanimate water. We treat rivers as Ganga to Kosi as like pretty kind of holy sites. And they flow across the border, I'm from a border town of Bhadrapur, where is this Mechi River, where during Chhat, all the devotees go and kind of take this arga. So on the other side is Galgalia station, which is northeastern Bihar, and on this side of the river is my town where I was born, Bhadrapur, and just next to it is the sensitive chicken snake in West Bengal. So you have to understand that because the ties between India and Nepal is so intimate, there will always be problems, and the Indian state in Delhi is prone to making huge mistakes. and the blockade, because they didn't like our constitution, was one solid manifestation in recent times. 2015 blockade. Don't forget, only a few months ago, Nepal had the largest earthquake in modern history, and Indian help was one of the most generous one and first one. Kind of like Operation Maitri is perhaps the biggest rehab project that India has conducted outside its own territory. But they spoiled it quickly with 2015 blockade, when then the same Indians said that, oh, Nepalis are playing China card. I say, which card do we play? Sorry, Uzbekistan or Russia? When we are tied to, we had to look for kind of like, if the border is locked this side, we got to find a transit for export and trade from the northern side, which is extremely difficult, I know, but China is also a big power. It's ready. Yeah. So you have to keep in mind that these are such cliches I read, like Nepal is playing China card again. What card is Nepal going to play, for heaven's sake? I mean, like,
So
completely
now that
discard
you're
card.
Yeah.
sorry, now that you've said so much about China, I haven't seen any reaction from China yet. Oli was just 10 days ago. He was there along with everybody else for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. I haven't seen a statement. I could be wrong. It may have come today and I haven't seen it. But have you seen a statement from China yet? India has responded saying that they're concerned about the violence and all that. But China has said nothing. Is
I
that a bit
haven't
odd?
seen it yet, honestly, but I haven't followed news this morning. But China is that kind of power anyway. So while India feels it has to respond, and rightly so, as our kind of neighbor with whom our even political ties, a lot of our like solid big parties, Nepali Congress and Communist Party of Nepal, was founded actually in India, And then Nepal's first elected Prime Minister BP Koirala had such a long exile life, political life in India. He knew kind of Jawaharlal Nehru, for example, very well, Indira Gandhi. It's a different story altogether. Kind of this is where China and Nepal ties is more, I would say, political. There are people to people ties with the borderland people, which I document in my new book that comes out in December, by the way. But yeah, in terms of like very intimate people to people ties, because Nepalese live in this Tarai heartland, a lot of Nepalese, 50% of Nepalese, or even more as we speak, which is bang to the north of India's most populated region. And if you go to the north, the Tibetan Autonomous Region is west of what they call the Hu line, HU, which is sparsely populated, and 94% of the Chinese population lives in this small strip of northern eastern seaboard.
Right. So the thing is that you spoke about the deep links between the Indian political class and the Nepali political class, and of course the Nepal Congress uh, was also formed as as an offshoot of the Indian National Congress, and so, is there? I mean, I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to be hated for it, I'm sure. Uh, is there a role that India can play in the same way that Nehru forged a Delhi Compromise all those years back? Um, is there a role that India can play in bringing about a political resolution in Nepal right now, a peaceful, a resolution for a transition and thereafter? Is there a role that India can play in
I
this?
mean, like, yeah, I mean, a lot. And first of all, I would like to qualify that our Congress party was not an offshoot of India's uh, Congress party. And this is the natural narrative I hear from a lot of Indian, including pundits, who kind of think that, oh, Nepal is so close that it is one of us. We are one of you, but we are still a sovereign nation. This is something that small state citizens and thinkers are very touchy about. And this is a good forum for me to speak. And that about your other question, that whether India can help. The first thing India could help, or any other big nations for that matter, US or China next door, and also like big organizations, institutions in those countries, is not jump to the conclusion that return to monarchy is a solution. It is not, as I see it. Again, this is my opinion, based on analysis. Two
Can I just interrupt for 1 second, please?
is,
Has the king said anything? King the former king, has he made any comment about anything
I'm
about any
losing
of
you,
these?
sorry.
I said, did
I,
King Gyanendra, the former King Gyanendra, has he made any observation or remark about these protests that have taken place over the last 2 days?
his grandson was trying to kind of like vilify parties, etc., and
Right.
say, and take a moral high ground. And these Genji folks quickly slapped him and said, "Okay, you are part of the problem, by the way."
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
interesting. So yeah, you were. Please continue. You were
yeah.
saying
What,
that
what I,
the
India could really help in letting, kind of nudging the various forces together. You know, why? Because the transition needs to be inclusive. So if Delhi, a big power, decides to play one against the other, it will not be in the interest of Nepal, but also in India. Don't forget, it's an open border. And I've done interviews on the ground in India. When the People's War was raging in Nepal, the biggest sufferer was India, because there was a massive immigration out of Nepal for safety, employment, etc. So for India's own long-term interest, it would be, if Nepalese are kind of like, India is seen as a partner, kind of quietly, politely nudging the disparate forces in these very trying and testing times where Nepal is going through extreme stress, political and name it social, kind of like security. Yeah, if we can nudge and then make the transition so much shorter and smoother, it'll be a huge help. But India being seen as an active player is always unhelpful, because don't forget, small states define their national identity in terms of big powers next door. Ukraine, Nepal is classic example of why India is so. Indian ask me, because our Indian nationalism is defined, and religion is such an integral part of the partisan thing, which is in your national collective memory. And so is ours, kind of like the British India was for 104 years virtually ruling Nepal, and then our Rana prime ministers, kind of like would do anything for the uh, British power. I mean, but also they got something in return. British India was the first, the Imperial Brigade Britain was the first country to recognize Nepal as a sovereign country in 1929. When India was still under the British rule, we are already a sovereign nation, declared a sovereign nation. So yeah, there's always a give and take with big powers, small countries' relations with big powers, and India could enormously help if it stays in the background, nudges our disparate players to come together, and doesn't take a very active role, or is seen as taking active role, let's say. Yeah, and in this case, there's a lot of these like guessing games going on in town in real time. Is Yogi Adityanath going to kind of be influential in Kathmandu? Given his like strong ties with, more kind of like Hindu constituency. Not Let's not say Hindu, right-wing constituencies,
right,
including the Shah dynasty, by the way,
right, okay.
the the
So
deposed Shah
the
king.
return of the monarchy is linked to a revival of Hinduism and Yogi Adityanath. Is that what you're saying?
I would like to put this way, that increasing number of Nepalese don't see revival of monarchism linked with revival, let's say, kind of like pride in reclaiming our position as a Sanatan Dharma nation. I would put it that way, and that is more cultural identity. While a section one this as a political identity that India should have, the BJP or the RSS elements should have a
Hindutva
very
country.
should have a very active role in this like transition.
Right. With that, I will thank you, Akhilesh and Radhakrishnan, R.K. Radhakrishnan. Thank you both very much for participating in this special edition of Latitude at Frontline. We've crossed the time allotted to us, and I should now bring this to a close. Thank you both very much, and we look forward to reading your book when it is published at the end of this year, you said, right? So we look forward to reading that book when it is out. Just remind us about the title again.
In the Margins of Empires.
Very nice title. Thank you very much. And it's going to be published by Penguin, you said?
Yeah, Penguin Random House.
Okay, we look forward to that. Thank you so much for participating in this.
Thank you,
and
thank you, Nirupama.
Radhakrishnan, thank you very much for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both of you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
We'll be in touch. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.